Before we begin, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, leave your like, and comment on what you thought of this story. I met him in the stable doorway while the rain calmed the pasture into dark stripes. His suit cost more than the barn, but he held his breath like the place smelled poisonous. "I don't like animals," he said, as if that were the same as a boundary line. His son stood behind him, all elbows and hope, one hand on a bay mare's cheek. I felt the mare's breath on my wrist, warm as tea, and the boy's trust warmer. "I'm here to make her safe," I told them, my voice low like the lights in a church. The billionaire glanced at the straw, the cobweb in the eave, the smear of mud on his imported shoe. He signed my contract without reading, ink scratching like a small animal trying to get out. "Keep the horse away from me," he added, as thunder rolled like furniture upstairs. I said yes, and the mare, Lyria, blinked at me as if we were already keeping a secret. I am a woman who listens for quiet things, hoof ticks, breath hesitations, the language of ears. The boy's name was Ian. He smelled faintly of shampoo and sugar and rainy wool. Lyria followed him like a tide follows the moon, soft, pulled, exact. When he brushed her, the barn filled with the hush of bristles and the sleepy knock of halters. I watched his hands learn gentleness, the way a candle learns to live with drafts. His father watched from the SUV, engine purring like a cat he'd never touch. Headlights cast long bars across the aisle, turning dust into glittering confessions. I heard a cough inside the idling car, then another, strangled, almost swallowed. The billionaire's face stayed stone, but the steering wheel took his grip like a punishment. I looked at Lyria, and she looked past me, toward the car, ears making a question I couldn't answer yet. It happened when the clouds broke, and the smell of wet earth turned sweet. The father stepped out, impatient, the way men are with things they can't buy twice. Lyria lifted her head, inhaled, and moved to him, not aggressive, curious, urgent. She put her nose to his chest, then lower, pressing gently against his upper abdomen. He recoiled as if burned, and pushed her away with a curse that sounded expensive. "Keep it away," he hissed, but his hand found his stomach like it had been there before. Lyria stamped once, a soft thunderclap on packed clay, and blew a breath that smelled of hay and iron. He laughed, nervous, then stopped when his father's jaw went white. A barn swallow stitched the air with a thread of shadow, and the moment sealed itself. That night I wrote in my stable log, "Mare targets left upper quadrant repeatedly. Note pattern." We keep notebooks in barns because barns keep time differently than offices do. Under Lyria's salt block, I found a folded sheet wicking moisture like a secret. It was Ian's handwriting, the letters tilted as if leaning toward the future. "Dad says horses are stupid, but Lyria knows when he's near," it read. On the back, a childish chart, dates, times, and a crude drawing of a stomach with an X. Each day the X darkened, as if the pencil had worn a groove into truth. I slid the note into my coat pocket and felt it like a stone I had chosen to carry. Outside, the wind pushed rain against the barn siding in long, patient swishes. Somewhere in the main house, a grandfather clock tolled, then coughed, then tried again. The mare shivered, then settled, as if she had just heard a word she had been waiting for. He said he despised animals, and yet pride made him mount. Maybe he needed to prove something to the boy, maybe to the sky, maybe to the part of himself that still believed in muscle. I checked the cinch twice while his cologne tried to smother the smell of rain and leather. His cough arrived with the wind, thin and metallic, like a coin dropped on concrete. We set off along the hedgerow, hedges brushing our knees like cautious witnesses.
At the creek crossing, Lyria stopped and put her head against his side the way a friend leans into bad news. He swore, raised the crop, and for a breath I saw the boy's eyes go glass bright. "Don't," I said, and the word left a taste like a battery on my tongue. The mare sidestepped, careful, placing him where the sunlight hit his skin and his breath hitched. He dismounted, pretending anger, but sat on a rock with both hands clutching the place Lyria had found. I wasn't looking for it. It was looking for me from the lip of a bin in the office. A white envelope, the seal half torn, hospital logo pretending discretion. Markers circled in pink, elevated this, abnormal that, all numbers that taste like pennies when you read them. Someone had written in the margin, "Repeat in 6 weeks if symptoms persist." I heard the printer in the hall spit a page, and the sound made me feel watched by paper. I slid the results back where I found them, a thief giving back a stolen hour. In the window's reflection, my face looked like someone else's, steady, older, already deciding. From the driveway, a cough traveled on gravel like a small animal running for cover. The barn smelled of iodine and rain-soaked wood. Lyria chewed slowly, listening to something I could not hear. I told myself it wasn't my business, and the lie scratched like straw under a shirt. At 3:17 a.m., the house alarms ping softly when they reset. The stable knows it. I woke on the tack room cot to the green glow of the full camera on my cheek. Lyria stood at her door, ears forward, tapping once, twice, keeping time with a quiet, unseen metronome. Through the speakers, I heard the father coughing in the kitchen. Tiles, echo, ice in a glass. Then a whisper, a child's prayer, muffled by the distance between floors and hearts. The mare exhaled, and the camera flickered, washing the aisle in ghost light. Dust motes lifted like snow, deciding whether to fall again. The clock over the feed bins ticked like the hoof on concrete, measured, indifferent, honest. I wrote one line in my phone's Notes app. Tomorrow, ask no questions and listen harder. Sleep came back reluctantly, like a cat that forgives you but remembers.
By morning, the groom, Marcos, had not shown, and his coffee mug held a lip of old night. He never missed Tuesdays. He said the horseflies preferred other blood then. His phone went straight to a gray voicemail, with the warmth turned off. I found his jacket on a nail by the water heater, still damp with yesterday's weather. In its pocket, a receipt for surgical masks and cough drops. In its lining, a single horsehair caught like a lightning strike. The billionaire asked no questions about Marcos. Rich men know how to live without witnesses. Ian asked 3, then folded them up and put them in his shoes, walking carefully the rest of the day. Lyria called once, a low sound from a place in her chest that wasn't built for words. Some truths arrive as silence, and that's worse because it fits anywhere. That night, I dreamed of hooves beating time on an X-ray lightbox. In the big kitchen, the kettle wrote a message on the window that the winter tried to read. I wiped a circle in the fog, and the glass smelled faintly of metal and lemon. He stood behind me, shirt open, pale where sun never takes a seat. "He don't like animals," he repeated, voice thinner, a thread pulled from silk. "I know," I said, and set a cup by his hand, its heat trying to bribe his fingers. He stared past me to the barn, where Lyria's shadow walked the aisle like a patient. "Something's wrong," he admitted, so soft the steam almost kept it. "Go," I told him. "Let a doctor name it. Don't let a horse be the only one who knows." His eyes flashed, pride's last flare, and then went out like a match in a sink. He nodded once, which is how some men bow. Hospitals share a smell, bleach, braided with fear and plastic. I sat under a TV that thought jokes were oxygen. They weren't. Ian swung his heels off the chair, counting in whispers. 1 to 17, again, again. Through the door, voices moved like hearts.
fast, important, unable to look back. A nurse with tired mercy in her eyes asked us about allergies, about faith, about next of kin. I held my breath when the fluorescent lights stuttered. They do that before news sometimes. He came out gray around the edges, a folder held like a shield he didn't believe in. The doctor used the word mass, like it had no weight, then said advanced, like a bell tolling only once. Treatment is a bridge, she added, and I watched that word find me from an older night. Ian tucked his face into my sleeve and exhaled a childhood he hadn't finished with yet. By evening, a statement had been written for us by men in suits who hadn't smelled rain in years. Exhaustion, it said. Minor procedure. Family time. Money can iron words until they look like truth, and the press loves a crisp collar. He signed the paper without reading, which is how we got here in the first place. Lyria tossed her hat at the flashbulbs beyond the hedges, silver fishes in the dark. Ian pressed a hand to her neck and his fingers found that pulse that comforts even the unbeliever. I wanted to tear the statement in half, and then in half again, making confetti that tasted like ink. Instead, I put it in the office drawer, next to the envelope I wasn't supposed to see. The house hummed like a machine running too hot. Somewhere a vent coughed and remembered being a throat. I checked doors twice that night, then dreamed of a ladder that led back into a burning room. He left it for me in the grooming kit, under the dandy brush, a spiral notebook with stickers peeling. Read if you're scared too, the first page said, and fear recognized itself. He had drawn Lyria kneeling, her head against a man's stomach, a speech bubble with a heart inside. Underneath, she knows, she told me in dreams, she taps when he lies about pain. The entries were short as held breath, dates, coughs counted, a sketch of pills like little moons. A page smelled of apples and tears. I didn't try to know which was which. On the last line he wrote, "If I'm brave, will he be?" and left the question hanging like a halter. I closed the diary and heard hooves in the aisle, though no one was there. When I looked, the light had changed, the gold of a winter afternoon pretending to be kind. I put the diary in my coat. It warmed me more than the radiator ever did. Sometimes you need a ceremony, even if it's only for the living. I hung the red halter on Lyria and asked the boy to lead her to the yard. The billionaire stood by the stone wall, collarless, as if the moon had taken him back. "Watch," I told him, and the word left my mouth like a promise I couldn't afford to break. Ian stepped forward, Lyria followed, then stopped exactly where the man's shadow fell. She breathed out and pressed her head against him, not hard, just honest. He flinched, then let her stay, and I heard the small crack a heart makes when it admits gravity. "Say it," I whispered, though I wasn't sure to whom. "I'm sick," he said, and the night accepted the words like rain accepts dust. In the silence after, even the crickets forgot their lines. We met in the office with the printer unplugged and the clock face turned to the wall. He wanted to confess and also to vanish. Men are good at wanting opposites. He hated animals because they didn't care that I own the world, he said, staring at his hands. They don't bend for power. They bend for pain. Lyria blew a breath at the window, fog haloing our reflections in animal light. I told him the truth doesn't cure, but it stops the rotting, the kind secrets do to a house from the inside. He nodded, then asked if telling would make Ian less afraid. "Not tonight," I said, "but it will teach him where to put his fear so it can't grow teeth." He pressed a palm to his side and laughed once, like a door creaking open in a storm. "Then we'll teach him," he said, and for a moment the room had air again. Cameras waited at the gate, hungry lenses glistening like eyes in a hedge. We walked past them to the paddock where truth had better footing. He stood between his son and the mare and began, voice low, careful, unlearned. "I'm ill," he said, and the microphones didn't get it. They're not trained for soft. He spoke of treatment, of bridges, of not knowing where they land, of not pretending control anymore. The mare shook her mane and the winter sun shattered into little coins across her neck. A gust carried the word terminal as far as the oak tree and laid it there, gentle and unreturnable. Ian took his father's hand and placed it on Lyria's warm shoulder, like plugging a wire back into a heart. For a breath, even the cameras respected distance. The red lights blinked and looked away. I felt the world tilt, not dangerously, just enough to pour us into a new shape. Days became measured by lab times and feed times, by drip rates and hoof rhythms. Sometimes he rode at a walk, the mare choosing the softest ground as if maps were made for mercy. Sometimes he only leaned against her, eyes closed, counting breaths like prayers without words. At night I still woke at 3:17 and listened for the house learning to be honest. Marcos texted once, only a horse emoji, and then the number went quiet again. The boy's diary grew thicker, mine did too, and our logs met in the middle like two hands. The billionaire laughed more, coughed more, loved louder, feared quieter. We never said goodbye, because the word is a cliff. We walked the fence line instead. If you ask what happened next, I will tell you the truth. Life kept going and so did the hoofbeats. And somewhere beyond the hedges, a ladder waited, not away from the fire, but through it, while the wind turned the pages for us.